thank you for joining us. I'm Anna Carugati, the Group Editorial Director of World Screen. I want to extend a warm welcome to our panelists, and they are Andrea Scrosati, the COO of Fremantle, Chris Stewart, the Commercial Director of Scripted at Banijay Rights, Robert Franke, the Vice President of Drama at ZDF Enterprises, and Françoise Guyonnet, the Executive Managing Director of TV series at STUDIOCANAL. The quality of drama in recent years has increased steadily with innovative storytelling techniques, fine writing, superb acting, directing, and production values. The 4 companies we have represented today have produced and distributed shows that have earned critical acclaim while raising the awareness and viewership of the channels and platforms on which they aired. The coronavirus pandemic has caused nearly the complete shutdown of drama. What impact has that had? And more importantly, what is the way forward as production starts to open? So let's start. Andrea, I'd like to begin with you. During this period, does the demand for drama remain high?
Oh, well, I think you could say actually demand is actually even higher because obviously people have been secluded at home and consumed content as never they did in the past. And the catalog that was available on some of the on-demand services was literally burned out by users very, very quickly. So the demand is high, obviously. I mean, on the other side, you need to fill this demand with new productions, and that has been the most challenging component.
Of course, we'll get to that in a moment. Chris, in these last 3 months, especially in light of sports events being canceled and productions being halted, how have you seen buyers' needs change?
I mean, I think we were expecting, I think as many people were expecting, quite a big influx of acquisitions to fill those kind of spaces that were caused by the coronavirus. But today, it's very much been business as usual for us. We've certainly seen more interest in availabilities and things like that. But in general, most of our clients have still been looking to fill those slots with the same kind of things that they bought from us before. So in general, it's very much been business as usual.
Robert, how have you been helping your clients fill those gaps that they have in their schedules?
We're trying to talk to them on a regular basis via Zoom and Teams and all these other new technologies. That's the foundation of everything that we're doing. And then we're trying to get a grip on like what type of programming they're looking for, because obviously filling those gaps, which were supposed to be filled with sport programs, is a huge task, and they have to come up with editorial strategies, and we have to make sure that our offerings are tailor-made to really hit home with our clients. So it's really a constant conversation which we're having, and then trying to, as good as we can, supply content which is relevant for them, and then also cost-effective, obviously.
Right, of course. During this period, Françoise, have you been able to continue with script development and working with writers?
We have received a lot of scripts, and we have also been able to continue scripted development as creativity during this period has been exceptionally high. We had a lot of green light of new development during this period. Yeah.
Right. Has this been the case with the rest of you as well? I mean, I speak with writers, and I know that of all of us, their lives have been impacted probably the least because it's a somewhat lonely and secluded profession. Have you been able to continue to work with writers and develop scripts?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, certainly it's been a hugely busy period. It's kind of been supercharged for development. Obviously, for those producers that were in production at the time when the lockdown struck, that was a particularly difficult time rejigging schedules and things. But for those who were certainly in development, it proved a brilliant time, and we've had a lot of actual success over the last 3 months with new script commissions from broadcasters, both internally within group companies and for those producers that we work with on a third-party basis. So I think they found it a really good time for most broadcasters, because you know those commissioners that are normally tied up on production have had that little bit of extra time to deal with new projects and new pitches, which has been really useful. So they've had that kind of more face-to-face contact and more regular contact, probably slightly faster turnaround times for decisions as well. So that's been really useful. It's certainly been a positive aspect of the lockdown.
Andrea, so actually all of you have been involved in international co-productions. Has the pandemic and the need to work remotely and not be able to see people face-to-face impacted co-productions, or have you found a way of proceeding with those as well?
I think the biggest impact is really with like business development aspects of our day-to-day work. So when it comes to talking to new partners, getting that first impression face-to-face is a huge difference in quality compared to having a Zoom call. So we see that this is a bit difficult to achieve via video call. But everything which was already en route is pretty smooth, surprisingly smooth actually, because we had the deals in place, so it was just like, okay, moving it into digital space. What we hear is that writers complain that it's more exhausting to have these type of conversations on a digital channel. But beside that, we are relatively happy with how the whole process is playing out for us, and it works pretty good in all circumstances considered.
Andrea?
Yeah, okay. I confirm. I mean, I think we share exactly the same experience. I think the business component. So the answer to your question is no. I mean, in the sense that this has not stopped business component of discussion on co-productions, and because that part you can do pretty easily with this kind of ways of communication. However, I think as Robert was saying, I mean, then there is a moment where when you put together creative teams, different creative teams and different producing teams, there is a moment where then there is the need to really share that project together to understand it and champion it, and that is obviously a little bit more complicated in this kind of environment. I also, regarding your previous question on writers, I think our experience is absolutely that it depends really writer by writer. There have been some writers that have been incredibly motivated by this situation. I confirm completely what Chris was saying. Another element that they found positive was an interaction with commissioners that was quicker than usual, notes coming back quicker than usual, and even having jumping on a Zoom call and getting a feedback from your commissioner in a much more direct and speedy way than before. But I will also say there are other writers that I think now, after 3 months of lockdown globally, you see they have suffered the lack of human interaction more. They're telling you, I miss listening to conversations on the tube in the morning. That actually is a pretty relevant point, because actually, look, we all produce content that has to create an empathic relation with audiences, and there is a moment you need to have that relation with audiences if you want to have that kind of creation in a real way. So I think it's a mixture. Yeah.
Right. Françoise, how's it been at STUDIOCANAL in terms of moving ahead with projects and co-productions?
It really has been business as usual. As Robert mentioned, we have done a lot of Zoom and Teams, and we have spent a lot of time in front of our computer, except of course for the stop in filming. So we have a lot of shoots which has been postponed. And so it has a major impact on our business for this year and for the co-production. But except the stop in filming, I mean, the rest was really business as usual with a lot of video conference instead of having meetings.
Right, right. Chris, I'll start with you and then we'll go around to everybody. As the cost of producing drama continues to rise, shutdown or no shutdown, and in fact, maybe resuming, costs will rise even more. Are financial models having to evolve?
Yeah, so just to go back on that co-production point, I mean, from our side, I totally agree that to date it's actually been running fairly business as usual, but to feed into the financing question, I think what will happen to co-productions in the next 12 to 18 months is equally as important, because I think it could potentially see quite a big impact from the COVID fallout. I think we've already heard from quite a few broadcasters who've said that they're more and more nervous about co-productions moving forward. And obviously, particularly in Europe, you know, the financing models are so reliant on co-producing partners to get to green light. And I think as the travel restrictions and then we start to ease out of lockdown, I think there's still going to be a nervousness around, you know, whether people can travel or not. When maybe not, you know, different regional lockdowns might happen again if there's a resurgence in COVID. And I think that will mean that some people are less willing to embark on the co-production projects that they were before. So I wonder whether that's going to result in more domestic production, and whether that means that, you know, budgets need to be reduced slightly, or whether the risk is going to fall more on distributors like us to fill those gaps. I think remains to be seen, but it's definitely something that's at risk, I think. You know, we may need to see more geographical workings, you know, people who are closer together working more closer together. Because you can understand if you're a British broadcaster that's producing something in another part of Europe, you might be worried that that's a big risk when you should be spending the money at home, when you have more control over what's going to happen. But I think in general, the financing models are, you know, there's still a gap between the super premium drama that is going to continue to be needed from the big S4 players. I mean, certainly from an S4 platform point of view, this last 3 months has just shown what a boom time it is for them, and I think they're going to need to keep producing those kind of big value, high production shows to keep competing with each other. And whether we see a fall away slightly in that middle ground between the, you know, 2 to 3 million euro an hour shows, because those co-productions are going to fall away, I think that's an area that is possible.
Right. Anybody else seeing changes in financing models or evolutions in financing models?
To chime in what was just said, it's very interesting to hear the perspective from the UK market, because like we in Germany, luckily we haven't suffered like this drastic impact because the lockdown was not that severe, and what Chris just described was the kind of like general white we had here maybe 6 weeks ago, where it was really uncertain, where we had like these types of conversation with our commissioners here, with the local commissioners saying, yeah, we don't really know, there's a lot of risk involved and so on. And now that we see that our society is opening up, we see that the attitude is also changing. Now that people can go back to restaurants, they have more trust also in co-production models. So I hope that will be the same for all other European markets. And I'm pretty sure as much as reality comes back into our lives and we gain more personal freedom as well, the co-production model will come back because there is no alternative at the end of the day. We have to mitigate investment risk by finding partners, and we have to produce because there is a lot of demand out there. And I'm sure we'll find ways to accommodate the needs of the security and find ways to finance good content.
You are talking a lot about co-production, but I think also there is a lot of opportunity now for local series, non-English speaking programming. because I think the platform and even broadcasters are more and more aware that they need high-end content, whatever the language. And we had really great success with some projects which were not co-pro, which were Spanish or French, or series like Création Originale, Baron Noir, or Spanish series like On Destro have been very successful and were not a co-production at the beginning.
I completely agree with Françoise. I think what you're seeing is an incredible appetite for high-end drama that not necessarily is in English language. And look, for us, we being a truly global has been an incredible opportunity during this crisis, because for example, we never stopped producing in some of our territories. We went through all the crisis with actually territories where we were shooting. And this involved scripted content like Neighbours, that you're probably familiar with, in Australia, but also in Germany, Good Time, Bad Times, and that is daily shows, but also high-end drama like the ones we're doing in Scandinavia with MISA, the investigation, or in Israel. And I think what you would say is today that kind of content will also have a higher market potential than it had before. I think the answer is absolutely yes, the financial models need to change, but I would make the point, financial modeling has to change constantly. We are in an evolving market and economy, and it's COVID, not COVID. It's the new players coming in, it's the new SVODs. I mean, constantly you need to adapt to an evolving world and understand that you cannot simply do things as you were doing it before forever. You have to be willing to change the model.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's constantly evolving. The finance models we're looking at now were completely different 3 years ago. And again, from our perspective, having the international perspective of a group has really helped, because same with Fremantle, we were lucky that a lot of our productions had either finished and going into co-production, or we had a lot still filming in Sweden, which didn't go into lockdown. So they were continuing to shoot. And now the countries that have started to open up earlier, like in New Zealand, where we've actually got a co-production of Series 2 of The Gulf with ZDF, starting to come back online. That's really helped from a group perspective, being able to feed into the other companies about experiences of how to start, where the mistakes are, where the right things to do, what the wrong things to do. And that's really helped, I think, on an international level, being able to get in touch with all of our producers and discuss means and methods of how to best go about getting back into production. So yeah, having that global approach has really helped.
Robert, I'll start with you, and then any panelists can add on. How are you working with channels and platforms if productions that you had going had to be shut down and now their delivery will be delayed? How are you negotiating with channels that fact? Obviously, they have to accept the fact that the shutdown took place because it's beyond everybody's control, but have broadcasters and platforms been accommodating to those needs?
There are two aspects to that question. One is the delay, and the second aspect is actually the increase in budget, because what we see, what's happening is that the productions which are coming back now here in Germany, we see a lot of shoots starting again, and that these shoots, they have to be readjusted in terms of security measurements to accommodate local legislation. And usually that goes with an increase, a budget increase, because you have to have more space, you have to have more cars, it takes longer to set up shots, all these things, and that costs money. So there's that aspect, and then the other aspect is the delay. And funnily enough, there are like two types of reactions. The public service broadcasters tend to be more concerned with the delay involved, because in Germany, at least, they react quite early here with support for the production companies, and they said like we'll cover that additional cost. for the private groups, it's a whole different story because like they're affected in two ways. They're affected by shrinking revenues from advertising, and at the same time they get their content not at the time they expect to get it, and they are in many cases need to even acquire more content in order to fill in all those gaps from sports. And there we have to find out models to kind of like raise that additional money, and there is no one size fits all solution, because we really have to look at each and individual production. Sometimes we have to tweak the books in order to make it more affordable. Sometimes it's like local government support. So there are many solutions to solve that, and we're trying to find solutions for each and every project, but it's very diverse actually.
Françoise, how and when do you foresee production starting up again? I'll start with you and then we'll go around, because all of you have production entities in different parts of the world, and different parts of the world are opening up at different times. How do you foresee it?
Actually, it has started again a week ago. It has started last week in Copenhagen with the season 2 of Pros and Cons produced by Sam. And Meta Foldager from Sam Production has sent us some images, some photos of the shooting, and it was really nice to see all the safety measures, and so far so good, everything is going well. And we hope to start again in a couple of weeks shooting in France and in the following months in UK, Spain, and in the US.
Right.
We'll start again slowly.
Right. Andrea, Fremantle has production entities everywhere. It's different. Obviously, Australia started much earlier than everybody else, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think like Robert made a point before, it's really, it's a territory by territory situation, to which you add then the state, the rules on one side. Then we obviously, as a company, as I'm sure all our colleagues, my colleagues, we then add our own rules. And then you have the stimulus packages. So obviously, for example, in insurance. So Australia not only started before, but as you know, Australia also put in place state insurance plan that is fundamental. Today you have something similar, France and Austria, but with a much lower kind of impact. So the answer to your question is, look, it's going back to production nearly everywhere. Today, actually, I received images of the shooting back in Italy that, you know, was clearly very, very heavily affected country from this morning. If I had to say the single territory that I see will be slightly slower to come back at the moment, apparently, is the US, but even I wouldn't say the US itself, is specific states of the US where I think we will find it a little bit more challenging initially. But again, it will be a combination of all these effects. So it's not one single element that will determine the speed of coming back to production. Right. But at the moment we are producing in, I think now, you know, more than 10 territories or 12 territories. So it is coming back in a lot of places.
Chris, Banijay obviously also has production companies everywhere. Are you also seeing a resumption in a number of territories?
Yeah, in the last few weeks, we've started to come back online wherever possible, really. As I mentioned, in New Zealand, we're back in pre-production on the Gulf Series 2. I know Yellowbird in Sweden have been filming on Snow Angels throughout the crisis. Obviously, they've had to change their style and put in various implementations around the new rules, but they've managed to keep filming. We've just started filming again on Hierro season 2 in the Canary Islands. So yeah, it's all about kind of shared experiences, really. As soon as we can start resuming in these different territories, we're ramping up.
Right. Well, I do have a question. we're reading a lot about how showrunners are changing scripts that were written before to adapt to the new regulations. Are we to assume that in the short term, romance scenes and kissing won't be, especially in a soap opera like Neighbours? I mean, are we going to allude to that rather than see it?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think technology does incredible things now. So as you know, I mean, on Neighbours we're using, and again, we're not the only ones, specific optics on cameras that mean that the two actors are actually not touching themselves, but if you film them in a specific way, that will be what you see on screen. Look, I just think, you know, the different situation, territory, the technology that you can apply means that I think we will see kissing scenes, and we will see, you know, kind of human interaction scenes pretty soon coming back in production.
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of the guidelines, you don't necessarily have to completely stop that kind of interaction. It's just about doing it safely. I think it will have an impact on the way that some things are structured. I know from anecdotal evidence we had, you know, we're prepping for a shoot which required casting of kind of an older age group category. I think there are 4 or 5 older people required, and I think there were certainly discussions around whether they should consider casting slightly younger so they're out of the kind of high risk category. So I think it's probably just sensible tweaks like that which, you know, they'll have to think about. But I don't see it as a long term, you know, as has been said. I think there'll be workarounds.
Okay, well, you've been very generous with your time, and I like to end panels on a positive note if possible. What opportunities do you see in the coming year, even with all the challenges? Although I think it's fair to say that necessity is often the mother of invention, and we seem to have a lot of creativity coming up both on the financing part and in the production area because of what the situation has imposed on everyone. But Françoise, let's start with you. How do you see the year ahead in terms of your business and demand for quality drama?
Actually, we have an amazing year this year with the distribution, because we were lucky. We had a lot of series which were already made. So we will, on the distribution side, we will have a very good year. And for the coming year, I think that there is an increase in production, international co-production, and we were very successful with series like War of the World, Years and Years, or 000. So our partners are asking us more and more projects. So of course there will be some delay with some big co-production, maybe a couple of months, but on a long term, it won't prevent us from launching this big co-production. So I'm quite optimistic.
People will remember what really helped them to cope with the COVID situation, and that was filmed entertainment. We're really positive that drama will continue to be a strong driving force in the growth of the entertainment market. And I can agree with what Françoise was saying. We have a really good year on the distribution side here because we have a huge catalog which we can sell off, and everything else is just a delay for us right now. So we will continue with our projects, and we're quite positive that we'll be able to get all those wonderful projects on screen and into our distribution pipe.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a big distributor and have a great catalogue like everyone on this call has, then I think the finished tape that we will have in our catalogue is only going to increase in value, as I think was referenced before, because ultimately there are going to be gaps in schedules, and I think that's going to start to show now in the next few months more than it has done, because there's been a reliance on news and fact-end programming, and repeats have certainly, you know, people have been stepping back into their catalogues to show archive programming. But I think ultimately there will be a demand for new programming. So all of the things that are in the can and ready to sell are going to have a better value and be in a higher demand than they possibly were before. So from our perspective, we were lucky that around February we launched 4 or 5 new titles, and there's been a lot of interest in those in the last few months, and I think that will hopefully continue whilst things start to get back to normal.
Andrea?
So yeah, let me make a general point. I think there's not one element of humanity like creativity that is the most adaptable, the most resilient, and actually the most leading change. You know, creativity is how human race has adapted through all its history, and we are incredibly lucky because we work in an environment that is based on that. So I do think, as you said in your question, actually difficult times usually generate incredible elements of mind. You know, you always remember, you know, William Shakespeare wrote some of his best plays during the dark quarantine, and so I think actually this period will generate some new way to think how we do our job, both from the creative and the productive way that we will then implement and find out actually why didn't we have thought about it before. You know, that's the first thing. And on a practical note, I think the other, as you know, as Robert said, I mean, this time has showed the enormous importance of scripted content and in general of filmed entertainment, and but also the incredible opportunity that comes from this new ecosystem of platforms that are available. And as Françoise said, that means that, you know, a small label producing in Spain or in Denmark or in Israel is now capable of delivering shows that are watched across the globe, 1 billion of people, and that's an enormous opportunity. So I do think, yeah, that's actually, after a lot of bad, there will be some great good.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for participating. And I speak for all viewers everywhere. What you produce is so necessary, not only for entertainment, but a very valuable distraction from all the difficulties that, and some more. Some people are really facing financial problems, and others have had their routines upended. But anyway, in all of this, there is nothing that equals being able to escape into a fabulous series. So thank you all very much. Keep the great work coming, and I look forward to speaking to you again in a few months when hopefully all of this will be behind us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you.